Whoa, 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 whoa. Do your thing, girl. Whoa, whoa. Do your thing, girl. Do your thing, girl.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Rooted and Well Watered podcast. I'm your host, April Carter Wilson.
And I'm her co-host, her husband, Jerry Wilson.
And we are so excited about this podcast episode. This series is pulling from my new book, Rooted and Well Watered, a deeper look at Sarah and Hagar. And this episode, we are pulling from chapter 18, It's Already There. And we are looking at Hagar and the moment that she was in the wilderness with her son, and she thought that her son would die. The son called out to God. God heard his cry and answered Hagar by revealing a well that was already there. And so in this episode, we're going to explore themes of connection, resources, trusting God, and what we can do to live and thrive in the community that He has already placed us in. And today, there's no better person to have this conversation with than the one and only Clarissa Joi. She is an entrepreneur. She's a woman of God. She is just a dedicated person to all things womanhood and all things community. She is the founder, president, CEO of Dedicated 365 and one of the groups I'm a part of, the VIP group. Welcome, Clarissa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Yeah, so you know you better than anyone else. So give us just a quick introduction into who Clarissa Joi is and one thing that you want someone to walk away with knowing about you.
So I would start off with I am a mom to a teenager, a wife. As you mentioned, I am a Christian. So I, strive to put God first in all things. I am an entrepreneur as well, now of 11 years, Dedicated 365. We motivate women to win big. And then I work in corporate. I'm a technology executive. So I love to say that that's my day job. And then I have a creative job as well, although I'm actually creative in both. So that's a little bit about me. One thing that I want people to remember, I would say, is it does not matter what your background or circumstance is. If you are fearless enough to dream it, to believe it, it can happen. And that is definitely the underpinning of my life and my journey.
That is a beautiful mic drop already. And I can attest to all of the things, the way you pour into not only your family and those close to you, but any woman that has a dream and comes to you and say, Clarissa, I have this dream, I have this idea. You're going to give us practical steps. Now, we might be a little upset because you're going to actually give us work to do. You're not just going to give us the answer, but we can go to you and get those practical, realistic, connected, God-inspired ideas to push our vision forward.
Awesome. You're representing technology executives. We might need to connect. I'm a technology executive, so that's awesome.
Yes.
I love technology. 25 years.
I'm, I think 30. How old am I? A little bit over 30 years myself. So yeah, long time.
Yes, and I love the alignment between technology and in our VIP groups. Oftentimes, you will make alignments between technology and how we use technology, how sometimes we're afraid of it, but there's something there that can enhance our lives, enhance the way that we are doing things. And so it's just a full circle conversation that we're going to have today. And I'm excited. And so we'll jump right in. Could you tell us a little bit about what you remember of the call and the weight of the call that God placed on your heart when you were called to start Dedicated 365?
Sure. I would say probably like many entrepreneurs, I feel that I somewhat stumbled into it. I can't say that I, came up thinking I would be an entrepreneur someday or I would have this call or mission to help other women, but it definitely kind of happened in the blink of an eye, although I know it wasn't a blink of an eye. So the saying that notes people will see your light or your calling way before you do is so true. And I had people, women specifically, asking questions, coming for advice, guidance, mentorship. And before you know it, it was like, what am I doing here? And also the juxtaposed to that is I didn't really even see myself at that time as someone equipped or able or ready to even be able to give advice. And so I organically began to lean into it, just really, not discounting those life experiences and the journey. And as I saw it began to help other people and resonate with women, I was like, okay, God, I see what you're doing here. Who
Mm,
knew? So that was kind of how it happened. And I love the second part of the question, the weight of it. Because initially I didn't really understand or maybe feel the weight because I was again stumbling my way into it. And then as I really gained a deeper level of appreciation for what exactly was going on, I went, whoa, wait a minute. Imposter syndrome start to creep in.
mm.
What if they think I'm a fraud? What if they find out that I wasn't always perfect? Not that I'm perfect now, but what if the skeletons come out? And all those thoughts began to come into play. And it was very, very heavy. And even now, before a workshop or before a speaking engagement, I still feel that heaviness today. And I had a mentor that say, well, that just shows your level of conviction, your level of just seriousness and appreciation for the women and the humility also behind what it is that I'm able to do. So I have rested that it may not ever go away and I'm okay with that, but just navigating even through it.
That's beautiful. It's interesting you say that. I was thinking and talked to someone the other day. It's usually the people who second guess their capability to fulfill a task, or second guess, whether or not anyone should be listening to them, are the ones who really, I think, particularly in times like these that we're in society now, who really need to speak up and lead.
Yes, and I love the richness of the history that you gave of how came to this point, and you made the distinction that I'm not perfect now, and sometimes I have imposter
Hmm.
syndrome, and that resonates with so many women because we often go through that, and we look at the story of Hagar in that moment. She didn't necessarily have imposter syndrome, but she was missing something that was already there. The well that was there, that was a source of provision for her and her son to live through this moment, to go on to the next stage. She couldn't see it.
Mm.
And it was because of the grief and the weight of the situation that was there that caused her not to see it. And so when you think about us having resources and things available to us that we sometimes miss, how often do you see that in working with women and inspiring us to be more? And we are talking about our dreams, but we're not tapping into the resources that's already there. How often do you see that and how do you respond?
I would say I see it very, very often. Probably it's maybe one of the top three reasons, right, that I see that women, we as people don't move forward. One thing about the story of Hagar is not only was the resource that she needed there and available, it was within reach. Sometimes we feel like where we're trying to get to is going to be so arduous, so, and it's really just these stories that we create in our own minds that create the wider distance to get there. So, when she turned around and saw the whale, it was like, wow, I didn't see a part in that scripture that says she had to travel for months to get to the whale, right? So that lets me know it was actually not only there, but also within reach. So for us, one thing that I've seen that really deters us from being able to tap in is us not speaking on it. So that is
Mm.
always my response. Who have you shared with that you need help, that you need assistance, that there is a part that you are struggling with, or you just simply don't even know yet? When we get to the place where we are willing to be open and honest and transparent about our needs, the people that are closest to us, right around us, they go, wow, I know someone in that field. I know someone in that industry. And before you know it, the connections are there, the resources are there, but it starts with openly sharing, right, what it is that we actually need. And to the person that says, what if I'm just starting and I don't really know what I don't need yet? I don't know the questions to ask because I've been in that situation. Other ladies have asked me about that situation. And for that person, I would say, talk about the desire. As
Mm.
we transparently talk about the desire, others that have traversed that same path will go, you know what? When I was here, these are some of the things that I had to think through. I had to work through. And then they will begin to kind of chart that path for us with probably without even knowing it. And we go, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. And that is when you can begin to understand what are the components that you need to ask for that you may not have yet.
That's beautiful. It seems too, as you're talking, you're really sort of underscoring the importance of community and engaging with your community. And I think we're everyone's talking about the loneliness epidemic, and it really sort of underscores this fact of, look, you might be feeling lonely, but there's a well around you if you would have the courage to speak up and engage with it.
That is amazing. And I love that imagery of her eyes being open because we sometimes think that God is going to drop a magical well in front of us. Scripture does not tell us that he dropped the well. It tells us that it was already there and her eyes were open. So what do you think happened in that moment when she's there, she's grieving, her son is crying out, God hears the son, and her eyes open? What do you think happened in that moment for Hagar?
In that moment, I would say it probably felt to her as a sigh of relief. She's probably thinking, wow, all of this time, even getting up to the point of praying because I just know we're about to die. That prayer like signified that she was over it. She felt in that moment she was completely helpless. There was no other way for her to make it through, to get to the next day. And she had completely given up. So for the people out there that feel like you have completely given up on something that you know God gave you, something that's in your heart, something that you go to sleep with, you wake up with, is on your mind, right? But you said, my hands are up. There's nothing else that I could do. That moment that she opened her eyes, it was the probably biggest relief of her life. Like, wow, it's right there. So I get excited and just thinking about that moment where she goes from destitute and that feeling of being hopeless to not only am I still alive, but I have the resources that I need and it's right there. I just need to tap into. I just need to take a few steps to get there.
One of the weighty things of that scenario is that it was within reach, and I love that you brought that to our attention. So, with it being within reach, they had been in the wilderness for quite some time, and they had stopped in that spot. She was preparing her son for what she thought was the inevitable passing of him, and God chose that moment to open her eyes. So, we don't know how long they've been there. But how do we discern God's not yet and between his not yet and his never? Because in her mind, she probably thought he was never going to make a way. But he didn't do it immediately when Ishmael became thirsty. He didn't do it immediately when she began to feel overwhelmed. But at the right moment for her in that situation, he decided to reveal. So, how do we discern God's not yet between that and never?
Yeah, so here comes the unpopular answer for today. And that is, it's not for us to decide. It's not
Ooh.
for us to know. It is for us to never give up on faith and hope and continue working forward in our actions and our part and wait for God to do the rest if and when he decides to. But that takes a certain level of humility on our parts to go, although he is my father, although he's going to provide all, he still is in control. So because he's in control, he decides when and where and how. Only thing we need to do is our part, which is continuing to go forth, continuing to do our all, our best, right? Continuing to show up. Because the other thing that I always like to reference is I don't recount any stories in the Bible where something happened and the person wasn't already in motion. So that leads me to believe we can't just sit there and wait and say, okay, like he's just going to drop it down on me. We've already got to be in motion, in position, in the correct posture, in movement. And that is when the blessings will just overtake us, will overshadow us. So again, it may be a little unpopular, but who's to say if it's a not or a never or a later? I would just rather say, can God find me in position of going forward? If it is the time for him to say yes, will he be able to say Clarissa was obedient? Clarissa was already in motion versus saying Clarissa was waiting on God to say he was about to say yes.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned it because even as you were talking in the previous answering the previous question, I was sitting there thinking, it seems like a stretch, but a lot of times we get in these situations where we've given up and the give up is so deep and the despair is so deep that God can open our eyes to a well and we still not drink. Right. And you say, well, that's far, you're going too far. But I think we are in a situation now where there's tons of people where God has finally revealed that well and they're just still there going thirsty. because that despair is just so deep, and they weren't, as you say, weren't ready. And that readiness, I think, can sometimes be mental, emotional, spiritual, as well as physical.
I absolutely love that point. And I would also give credence to society for really pumping up the notion of despair. Like,
Mm.
even if you watch shows that I love, like American Idol, right? Or whatever the show is, there's always a despair story that the world is waiting on. The contrary to that is we sometimes like to stay there to prove how bad things are. But
Yeah.
then I always say there's no gold star for struggling for 10 years. I'd rather say the struggle was 1 year. But just because you struggle 1 year versus 10 years, does that mean that either person is better? No, right? So to your point, the well can be right there. God can open our eyes and we still go, but I rather the glorification of Facebook to post this long story
Mm.
about how horrible my life is. So at some point, we've got to recognize the social plays, right? The societal plays into our behavior. And some of us may not understand or realize that we are feeding into attention from sources that are not really the sources that we should be giving that attention to.
Yeah,
My God.
it would be crazy, because nowadays this is what happened. God would open our eyes, we'd see the well, and we go find our phone so we can post about the well, and then you go back to look at the well, you can't find it now, because you've taken your eyes off that prize, right? You weren't pursuing what you should have been pursuing.
Man, so when we think about that well and the moments leading up to the well, when Hagar and her son were cast out, Abraham gave them this skin of water. It was just enough to make a small journey. And once that was gone, they thought that that was it. But when she saw the well, the very thing that she saw as limited is the very thing that she used to replenish, to refill, and she can continue to go back to that well. This skin of water that represented something, emptiness, now represented plenty and overflow. And so oftentimes we have something, maybe a job or
Mm.
something that is enough for that moment, but we don't always see how it connects to something larger, how we can use this experience for something greater. Talk about in your life how you've been able to multiply and use the things that may have seemed limited at one point, but God provided the overflow.
Sure. So, the classic examples in my life that really resonate for me with that question, it goes back to experiences. When I was going through certain, I would call destitute experiences, right? It felt so limiting. It felt like how am I going to rebound from this or be able to excel from this place? And what I found was quite the opposite. Those places of lack, of limited resources, they actually built my character for who
Mm.
I needed to become to handle the weight that was to come. So had I not been a woman that had been a single mom for 9 years, how could I empathize with a single mom that comes into my group today? So I can feel her heart before she even tells me her story because I've been there. Now, that doesn't mean we have to have a lived experience to have empathy. However, just even in the workplace, when I think about being a junior level professional, right? And now talking to a junior level professionals that have the desire to promote up. It's like I've been there. So I would say to that question, all of the experiences where I felt like the lowest man on the totem pole, or I felt like it was the worst situation that I'd ever have to endure, the sum of all of those experiences actually made me the person I am today. And I know that sounds so cliche-ish, but what we have to realize is even after you get to the point where you say, oh, I have a desire to get here, when you get there to that point, what it takes to maintain that point is character. It's not just reaching that goal or reaching that level, but how do you maintain it? And that is the work that you put in through those low points, those low moments. You're doing the work at that point to really, really build that muscle, to build the character. I can't say that enough within you because that's when you're going to be tried, right? When you've got
Yes.
to that next level, the trials don't stop. They come even harder. Because then you've got people that are questioning your ability, that are jealous of your abilities, or going after your abilities. So how do
Yes.
you maintain and even continue to grow even after you've reached that next goal, that next level?
It's interesting, and you know, we see it all the time, right? You know, a lot of times we strive for these positions without thinking about the testing that comes with those positions, right? And to your point, the character, you know, that's what prevents us from sort of, we reach this phase, and as we're going there, all these people are pushing against us. And we're like, when I get to that point, when I'm an executive, I'm not going to be like them. Well, it's your character that's going to make sure that you're not like them and you're able to pull people up and make a difference, right? And a lot of people shun those moments. It'd be nice if we could all just like learn from being told. But a lot of times it's that experience that we need to really sort of take, because like what's the word, like the longest distance in the world is from your brain to your heart, and a lot of
Yes.
times it takes those struggles to get what we know up here into here.
Yes, and Clarissa, I'm always just so in awe whenever you share your testimony, which you do so beautifully and so freely, and it's always so inspiring. And you know, as we begin to close out this conversation, when we look at Hagar and her experience and everything that she had gone through to get to that moment, and every moment after that, and we talk about in a later chapter in the book that Hagar eventually becomes a free woman. And we see that in her ability to be able to negotiate a wife for her son, which you had to have some elements of freedom in order to be able to negotiate that in those times. And she lived in and thrived in the very environment that she thought she was going to die in. So they were in the wilderness, in the desert, thriving, working, building families, building legacies. And so, for someone who may be at some point in the journey, maybe they are just now feeling like they are being outcast. Maybe they are in the wilderness feeling like they are dying of thirst and this is the end. Or maybe they found the well and they're beginning to build a life after that. What would you say to someone who wants to live fully, no matter what their circumstances may be currently? What would you tell them is the key? Not necessarily the key, but how would you tell them they can live fully, no matter the circumstance?
Sure. I guess it would be two things that come to mind. Firstly, not being afraid to dare. None of us will get to that next level or the level after or the level after without being daring. That courageousness and doing that through fear. Those people that are highly successful that we, I was going to say idolize, but not idolize, but really look up to, right? Whether it's on social media or people we even know in real life, right? Sometimes we create this thought, the message in our head that they are not afraid or they don't have the issues or challenges that the everyday person has. I would argue and say they are yet the everyday person because they
Mm,
are breathing air, the same air we are breathing. They are putting on their pants one leg at a time, just like we are, right? So don't set yourself out to be someone like a barrier between who you are today and who you desire to be or the level you desire to achieve. So, yeah, I would say you have to be daring. You have to be courageous. There is just no growth in mediocrity. There is just no growth in being comfortable. It's just, it's an oxymoron. They cannot exist. You cannot say you're going to be great, but yet, you're still at the crawl phase, right?
mm,
If you've heard of crawl, walk, run, right? Also, I would say, in terms of doing things afraid, not waiting until you feel the perfect time or you're
mhm,
perfectly set up in position to go forth, just going forward anyway. As soon as you have the idea, just taking incremental steps towards whatever your goal is. Also, I would say going back to that community piece because it's a piece that we underscore, we don't
mm,
talk about much. But again, there's no gold star in struggling. Tap into a community, right? We are not built to
Yes.
do things alone. It's going to be harder. It's going to take longer. And I would say, why? Why struggle unnecessarily if you can tap into resources organically, genuinely, with a heart of care and love and concern, not just about being about myself, but the more you take a genuine interest in others, they will take a genuine interest in you.
mm,
And before you know it, we are all scratching each other's backs. I mean, that's the perfect environment. We are looking for ways to help other people, to build up other people. I hear of something, I say, someone mentioned that. Let me connect them with you really quickly, right? And then it'll become a part of our DNA. And before you know it, we're doing it organically and often, and everybody's winning. Everybody's eating, as we say.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is not something that, you just, tout for the camera. This is the core of how we operate in the VIP group. And I would love to invite anyone who's looking for community and support and accountability. That's the one thing now. I'm going to tell you, there are going to be some days where you feel like Clarissa is being the drill sergeant, but it is always in love. And there's beauty on the other side of that. I can attest for my own personal testimony coming into the VIP group. I had all of these ideas and I have all of these thoughts, and I have been supporting so many other folks. And you challenged us to get beyond just the idea. You may be able to do this, but where's it in writing? How are you structuring your day? You say you have this idea, but you're spending 4 hours on Netflix every night. The connections are already there, abilities are already there, experience are already there, and that's one thing I do appreciate. And so I would love for you to provide information if someone is interested. If like, let me check out this dedicated 365 for this VIP group. How can they learn more and possibly join?
Absolutely. So first stop is our website. You can go to clarissajoi.com. That's joy with an I, Clarissajoi. You also can email us at team@dedicated365.me. And we'll be able to answer your emails if you have any questions or concerns or wanting to have more information. Of course, we're on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can just look for us at Clarissa Joi, and you can find us there.
All right,
Awesome.
fantastic. And do you have any books or anything that folks can purchase just to learn just a little bit more about the journey of Clarissa Joi?
Absolutely. So I do have a book. It's on the website. Is Want Your Own Job While Being a Corpreneur. It's on the website, clarissajoi.com, and it's on sale.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Clarissa Joi, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. As always, just powerful and so inspirational. And if you have not gotten your copy of Rooted and Well Watered, a deeper look at Sarah and Hagar, you can go to our website at rootsandwells.org or available on any platform where books are sold. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you.
Where all the women of excellence, all my ladies say war not, say war not. Do your thing, girl.